I was just asking myself, do they realize I'm an associate and they're hiring for a director? I'm not working for the job I'm in. I'm dressing for the job I'm going to be in. I need to find a way to get into the good books of wealthy people.
You're acting like you didn't create that luck yourself.
Lamide, come on. If I'm not going to be number one or something, I'm not going to do it.
You must have pissed some people off with that.
A little bit. My father wasn't around. He was forced into exile. He passed literally in my arms. Once we lowered that casket into the ground, I asked myself, are my dreams worth deferring? They made an offer I couldn't refuse. In all labor, there is profit. Whether or not you see the profit in your paycheck doesn't mean it hasn't profited you.
How did you get rich? I hope you guys are excited to get into this episode. Don't forget, if you would like to purchase an investment property in Dubai, make sure to fill out the form below and book a free consultation with me. Welcome to the Building Wealth with No Borders podcast with me, Lamide Elizabeth, where I'll be bringing you guests from around the world to share their strategies on building wealth. And today we are in London filming at Myriad Studios. So if you're looking for a reliable studio, definitely check them out. We are here in London with ex-director at Standard Chartered Bank, venture partner and founder and CEO of JA Group, Jude Addo. Welcome.
Thank you.
Etiseng?
Nyame Addo.
Oh my God, I've never heard that response before, so I don't know what to say. Are you supposed to say like, Eye Boko?
You can say Eye Boko. You can say Nyame Addo, which is also very common, which means by God's grace.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh,
Nyame
okay,
Addo.
cool.
Yeah.
That was good tweet though, isn't it?
It's not twee.
Oh. What is it?
No, it's tree. It's pronounced tree, not twee.
Sorry, tree.
Tree, yeah.
Like TREE.
Yeah, just not so re-ish. So like tree. You have to add a bit of a W in there.
Tree.
Yeah, tree. Perfect. Well done.
Thank you. I am super excited to have you on here because, well, I think we need more Ghanaians on the show. But then also you have done some amazing things at your very young age that you're very humble about, but hopefully you'll share more in today's episode. But I'll let you introduce yourself before I start asking you some questions.
It's always a bit of a tricky thing for me to try to introduce myself because I don't really know where to start. Different people know me as different things.
Okay.
So to some, I'm an author. To some, I'm an investor. To some, I'm a private equity guy. To some, I'm a corporate bank. Exactly. Yeah.
You never told me about that part.
Yeah. I've written 2 books. The last one was as far back as 2014. So I started my authoring journey very young. And yeah, to some, I'm a corporate banker. Some, I'm an investment banker. What I think I've been trying to distill what I really am or who I really am in a few words. And I think I'm just a problem solver at the intersection of wealth and well-being. I think that's pretty much what I am. Because I'm a pastor. You know, you didn't know that. I was running a church, obviously, as a lay preacher. Because I was
what preacher?
A lay preacher.
What does that mean?
Part-time.
Okay.
So I was still working in banking while I was running a Sunday service, youth service for 3 years. So
in the UK?
In the UK, in Maidavale. So I've done a lot of different things. A lot of different things. But by extraction, wealth manager, corporate banker, born and raised in Ghana, moved to the US for my degree level education, although I did a semester abroad at UCL, and then started working in sort of bulge bracket investment banking, corporate banking, and I followed that journey until 2019 when I finally threw in the towel and became a full-time entrepreneur.
I'm still stuck on the pasta because how did that not come up in previous conversations?
Yeah, man, I'm full of surprises.
Okay, well, this is going to be interesting. So let's take it back to how you grew up and like kind of what you were like during school. What was it like growing up?
I'm the last child of 12. So I'm a last born. I grew up in a middle income household. It didn't feel like that at the time because I grew up at a time where my father wasn't around. He not of his own volition. He was forced into exile in the Ivory Coast during the 79 coup in Ghana. And so I was born in 88, right? So I was conceived in the Ivory Coast, but born in Ghana. And so during the time I was growing up, at least for the first 6-7 years, I was commuting to Ivory Coast to go see my dad. And so it was a really difficult time growing up because I could tell the strain that it was having on my mom. And that led to a certain conditioning, knowing that I had to, do something, make something of myself, to support my mom, and and it sort of proved itself out, even during my very first job when I was 15. I worked in an internet cafe, and my entire salary, which in today's money is probably like £50, for 3 months, I gave everything to my mom.
Oh, I would love that.
I didn't touch a single penny of it. I gave everything to my mom. But yeah, that was my context growing up. The childhood, I went to the same school from year 1 to year 13. So a lot of my friends are lifelong friends. In fact, if you look at the C-suite of my company, J Group, the C-level suite are folks that I've known for 30 plus years, or maybe 25 plus years, growing up in Ghana. We've been friends for a very long time, and they've done phenomenally well in their own right, but we've just teamed up to do things together. And yeah, I'd say that's pretty much my early
What
beginning.
were you like as a student? Were you smart? What subjects did you like?
I wouldn't say I was dumb. I was... My teachers, I still sometimes I look back at my report cards. My teachers always used to say he has a lot of potential. So I was a very brilliant kid, but I was distracted by ladies, by music. So I was part of a rap crew in high school. Yeah, you're finding out new things. So we were doing all sorts of silly things growing up, and I was very distracted, but I was still a pretty. So when I sat up, I was top of my class. When I didn't, I was sort of slightly above average in terms of the ranking. So that sort of distraction played itself out all the way through high school until I went to university. And then by some sort of orchestration, I was called it divine orchestration. I just sat up. And that's actually when I, found faith. And then I just started beasting it academically. And I pretty much graduated 0.1 shy of summa cum laude, which is top of your class. Yeah.
So can you drop some bars for us?
No, I can't.
Okay, so going to uni, you studied in quite a few places. So what was your thought process on like kind of choosing where to study?
Yeah, I mean, so if you had the route that I had, typically if you go to a school like I went to a private school, you typically have two routes, which is you'd either go to the US to study or to the UK. For some reason, I just had an affinity towards the UK. It probably had nothing to do with the hip hop I was doing at the time, but I just had a very strong feeling that I was going to go to the US, and that materialized in the form of an academic recruiter from my alma mater, Bryant University, coming to my high school and making a pitch about the university. And long story cut short, they offered me they made an offer I couldn't refuse. It was they gave me almost a full academic scholarship, and so coming from my neck of the woods, where it would have been difficult to pay $52,000 a year for a degree level bachelor's degree. I mean, it just made sense to take them up on the offer. In fact, I got into a university called Syracuse University, which was quite big, for basketball, because I was playing, varsity basketball in high school at the time.
What didn't you do at this point?
I played varsity basketball, so I was on the school team, and I really wanted to go play basketball. I don't know why, because I don't really have the height for it, but I was decent, and so I got in Syracuse, but unfortunately they didn't give academic scholarships to international students. So it didn't quite work out. So I ended up going to Bryant, and it was probably the best decision I ever made.
Why?
Why? Because it was in a small town in tiny state of Rhode Island, so very few distractions. And then the smaller class sizes. So I just got sort of that TLC that I needed from professors, and it just made me sit up. And it allowed me to, and obviously that's the campus I found my faith on. And the rest is history. So I think that's probably why it was just the best decision I could have made.
And what was you studying?
I started off studying computer science. So it's Brown University. It's a business. It's historically a business school, but they added a liberal arts component. So you have to, if you're doing a business degree, you have to do a liberal arts minor. So it was a bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in computer science. But I got in there because of the liberal arts program and because the rigor of my secondary school education, having done economics at a very advanced level, I found economics very easy. So I added on as another major. So I didn't even do a major and a minor. I did 2 majors. I did a double major in 4 years. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration with a concentration in economics and in computer science.
Wow. And then how did you end up doing? So you said you did a year abroad at UCL.
I did.
How was that? Why did you go there?
Why did I go to UCL? Gosh. It had nothing to do with academics. So I was dating a lady at the time.
I knew the story. That's why I wanted you to say it. That's so funny.
I was dating a lady at the time who I had met actually in high school. She's actually Nigerian. And I went to the US, but she ended up going back to the UK. And I was trying to always figure out a way to obviously, reconnect while not sort of creating an interruption in my studies. So the study abroad program made sense. That's how I ended up applying to UCL and getting in. And yeah, sadly it didn't work out with that lady, but yeah, I still got UCL on my resume.
And so what was your experience like in London? Because then you ended up doing investment banking in London, right? You started in London?
Yes, I haven't worked in anywhere other than London. So right after graduating Brown University in the States, I got actually, we need to backtrack a little bit because I think this is an important point. So while at UCL, and that's why I say Brown was kind of a divine thing. While I was at UCL, I went to a career fair, I think somewhere on campus. And JPMorgan was there and they were pitching JPMorgan. I'm like, hold on, I don't quite think I'm the guy for this, but somehow they were very keen to talk to me. So we got talking. I submitted my resume and I never heard back from them. And I had to go back to the US because my semester abroad program was done. So I did as you do during Christmas, you do a small detour back to Ghana to go and do Dirty December. And while I was in Ghana, I get a call from JPMorgan that they want to interview me. I'm like, dude, I've already left. There's no chance of me. I can't afford to take it back. They're like, don't worry, we'll pay for you to take it back. Just come and do an interview. It's like, okay, these guys are a serious shop. So I finished my Dirty December. I flew back to London for a day or a day and a half, 2 days, just to do an assessment center with JPMorgan.
They must have really loved you.
I don't know. It must have been the good looks. I don't know. I'm kidding. And I did that and I flew back to the US. Well, the second day, fall semester. No, sorry, I beg your pardon, spring semester. I get a call from a +44 number. They're like, hey, we loved you at the assessment center. Would you like to do an internship with us over the summer? I'm like, of course, happy to. And so that summer, I flew back to London, went to do my internship at JPMorgan. Beasted that internship. I think, yeah, they produced rankings. I was number one. And obviously they gave me a full-time offer thereafter. So upon my graduation, I moved directly back to London. But I actually started my career in technology.
Right.
Because I went down the JPMorgan track of technology because I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I had a concentration in computer science. I had a concentration in economics. So I was going down the computer science route and started my career in back office technology, sort of building software for the traders in the front office. But when I got there, I realized it wasn't for me.
Why?
So, and I think, hindsight is always 20/20. But one thing I've realized about myself over the past decade and a half is that I'm an extremely competitive person. So if I'm not going to be number one at something, I'm not going to do it. And when I got into the tech department, I realized that I wasn't going to be number one because I didn't have a passion for technology. I understood it. I knew how to leverage it, but it wasn't something that I would go to bed thinking about and dreaming about. And I looked around the room and I thought, hold on, there's a bunch of people here that are much better at me than this. And so I started assessing my skills, and I realized I had the gift of the gab. I realized that I was doing a lot. Even when you look at my double concentration, I did a lot better in economics than I did in computer science. So I was like, hold on, what can I do that would bring a mixture of a business economics background and sort of sales, talking to people. And I figured that the front office would be a better match for me. But especially at that time, probably even more so now, it's unheard of to go from back office technology to front office banker.
Yeah.
Completely unheard of.
Talk to us about that, because we have quite a few bankers watching the channel. What was that? What was your strategy for that?
Well, my strategy was, I knew it was going to be a nigh impossible task to make that transition in a one-step movement, right? So I devised a plan to do certain roles that will serve as springboards into the front office. So I looked across the bank and I looked at different departments, and I saw sort of market risk as this sort of highly quantitative area that was respected by the front office, that gave you very sort of deep analytical skills that you could essentially BS your way into the front office because they wouldn't understand what you're talking about. So I got really, really fortunate. I put in an application to a very, very quantitative role in market risk from technology. They bought my BS and they hired me.
Is that JP?
That was a JP.
Oh, that's so interesting because I did credit risk.
Did you?
Yeah. So we were like, market risk and credit risk were like under the same bracket, risk management.
That's wild. Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. It was a very difficult role. I was way out of my depth, but I think I got it after 6 months. But at the 8-month mark or 9-month mark, I got really fortunate. A corporate banking role came up. They had interviewed maybe 79 people. I saw it very late, and I was the 80th person to put in an application. But prior to that, there was a lady called Cassie Pluck. I think she married, and her name is now Cassie Bartley, who was the head of HR for front office banking. And we had struck a really good relationship. So when this role came up and they had gone to 79 in terms of interviews, she's like, hold on, this is a guy called Jude I've been talking to. And she pinged me. She's like, you should put in an application with this role, which I did. And long story short, I was interviewed. They liked me. I BS'd my way into it. And
You didn't BS your way. You're very smart. So you knew what you were doing. Your relationship with the HR lady, was that also strategic?
Well, I'm not a transactional person, right? So it was strategic, but not. We genuinely liked each other. There was an organic relationship there. But obviously it was strategic in the sense as well that I knew at some point in the future we might be helpful to one another. I wasn't just thinking unidirectional, right? Because that's the most important thing about relationships. It has to be symbiotic.
Definitely.
If you're not adding value to the other person, there's no point.
And then tell me more about your time in banking now. So you've made it to front office. How did it kind of shape you? What was your experience?
It was probably one of the most transformative experiences for me, because I've been very fortunate enough to be given opportunities that probably haven't been afforded to other people. I probably at the time I was 24 maybe. I was given a small book of clients to manage, unheard of, especially someone who had done almost 2 years in non-banking roles, which are technology and market risk. I was given the opportunity to fly with the senior bankers across Europe to kind of interesting places, not very sexy places, but still, I was given a corporate credit card. I mean, I was literally lavished with almost every perk you can think of, and it was humbling, but it also gave me the opportunity to learn at the feet of some really seasoned bankers who know their stuff cold, and I think having that background in technology and market risk also gave me the opportunity to figure out exactly how all these different departments interact with one another in the bank. So I had a unique advantage in the team. Whenever people needed stuff done, I already knew somebody somewhere else in the bank to get it done. So it was a deeply enriching experience for me.
You say that, like, you got all these opportunities and you're acting like you didn't create that luck yourself. Because you did. You must have been good. They don't just give portfolios to anyone.
Yes.
Give credit cards to, like, you must have been really good. And was that because you loved what you were doing? Maybe love is a bit strong, but...
No, I absolutely loved what I was doing.
Really?
I absolutely did. Yes, I did create some of this luck. Obviously, I'd never discount the faith element. Prayer, faith was very, very instrumental in some of these moves. But I was also very intentional in the people I was talking to. I was very intentional in the partnerships I was creating. And I was just very good. You have to be good. You have to perform. If I didn't perform in technology, even though I wasn't loving it, I wouldn't have been given a role in market risk. And if I wasn't performing in market risk, I wouldn't have been given a role in corporate banking. So regardless of whatever situation I found myself in, whether or not I liked it, I always performed. That's the benchmark.
That's so good. I feel like one of the things that you said about why you had to leave tech was, for me, why I had to leave banking. In terms of I didn't love it. I didn't love it, and I hated, like, and I could have probably put in more effort, but I didn't need to put in that much effort to do okay. And so I would just do okay.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't be spending 12 hours of my life every single day to do something where I know that I'm never going to be the best that I can be because I just don't care about it enough. And this was me throughout uni as well. Like, any module that I really, really liked, I would get 70s, 90s up to, which is insane for uni. Uni 70 is like your first class, right? You don't usually need to get above that. Yeah. But then the ones that I didn't care about, like, it would be like 61, 62. So I knew that, like...
You're really smart. I mean, come on, that's a humble brag. Things you didn't care about, 61, 62?
I mean, I don't know, but yeah.
Humble brag.
I had to leave because I was just like, when I don't really care about something, when I don't really love it, I'm never going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
And I can do it when I want to, though. So like in my internship, when I really wanted to convert, I was like with the rankings, number 1, number 2. And then after I got the job, I was like, man, I can't keep this up. I don't care. I can't keep up acting like I care. But that's really sick. So then you ended up becoming like one of the youngest directors at Standard Chartered Bank. Right. How did that happen?
Stroke of luck. So one thing I did very well at JPMorgan was I made myself known for something, even if it wasn't sexy. I was the aficionado on Africa. JPMorgan wasn't that serious with Africa about Africa at the time. And that didn't matter to me because Africa mattered to me. I was very serious about it. I knew long term I wanted to make major moves on the continent. And so one thing I did even in the corporate banking department was to figure out ways in which JPMorgan could expand its presence in Africa, using South Africa as sort of this wedge platform to make its way on to further up into sub-Saharan Africa. And I became known for that. I became known as a guy who was hugely passionate about Africa and who was willing to put his hand up as it relates to anything that has to do with Africa. So there was an executive director who I worked closely with who had left JPMorgan and went to Standard Chartered. And Standard Chartered, for anyone who knows, is a hugely impressive emerging market focused bank. So Africa, Asia, Middle East, those are their core markets. And they were looking for a director. And obviously she remembered me. She knew me as the guy who had, touted this whole Africa thing long before it was sexy. And she made a recommendation. And I had just become an associate at the time at JPMorgan. And it was a director role they were hiring for. But she made a very strong recommendation, and the hiring manager reached out to me, had like 5 different interviews, and I was just asking myself, do they realize I'm an associate and they're hiring for a director? But long story short, at the end of the 5th interview, they were like, yeah, this role could either be a director or associate director, which is slightly below a director role. But having met you, we're going to put you up for director.
How old were you?
I was 26, going on 27 at the time, 26, 27.
How long had you been an associate?
A year.
What?
Yeah.
So for those who aren't used to banking, usually coming at an analyst role, usually like 2 years, maybe 3 years.
In front office.
Yeah. And then go to associate. Associate can, some people spend a long time.
Like 4 or 5 years as an associate. 4
or 5 years. Maybe if you're good, like sometimes in our division, maybe like 2-3 years. Maybe like 3 to 5 years, I would say on average.
Yeah.
Then you go to VP.
Yeah.
A lot of people stay at VP level because at that point you're making good money, you're senior enough, but people don't always want to go to that director level.
Yeah.
It's VP, can be 10 years as a VP, then director. You went from first year associate to director. That is huge.
It was huge. And it was completely unheard of. I was pinching myself. I thought they were going to call me back and be like, yeah, we made a mistake. But I think it was because I had been so purpose-driven my entire career. And I had carved a niche for myself that was difficult to substitute me for anybody else.
If you're enjoying this content, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And if you would like to become an international property investor in Dubai or in the UK, the link to book a free consultation will be in the description box below. If you're not quite ready to invest yet, check out the affordable video courses that will also be linked in the description box below. And if you would like to relocate to Dubai, set up your business in Dubai, or anything else related to relocating to Dubai, check out www.theprofessionalnetwork.com. How did so you wanted to be the Africa guy, right? So if someone is watching this and they're thinking, which I'm sure many people will be like, I want to be this guy, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs. Well, you're an entrepreneur now, but there's also the majority of people are going to stick in a corporate job and want to get to a good place. They want to do big things, right? If someone was watching and they're thinking, how do I make the moves like this guy? How do I create luck? Because I think that divine favor, absolutely. But you created your luck. Not sometimes, for a lot of luck, you have to be in a position to receive it for it to come. Like you prepare yourself, you don't know what's happening, but you prepare yourself. And then when the opportunity comes, if you're prepared, then you go for it, right?
Yeah.
How, if someone is watching this, how do they practically do that for wherever it is they want to do? Maybe if you share how you did it for you. So was it like every morning reading on Africa? How did you do it?
I think there's a number of things I did very well. Again, hindsight is always 20/20. But I found something I was very passionate about that I couldn't fake. And became almost obsessive about it. So every morning I come to my desk, first thing I would open was the Africa page of BBC News. I'll read up on Africa, read up on the latest stories. Bloomberg was the same. FT was the same. You know, all these publications have Africa sections.
Yeah.
So there was nothing anybody could tell me about Africa that I didn't already know. And it got to a point that, you know, most people wouldn't even read anything. They would just come and ask me what was going on. And I was putting out internal publications. So I would sort of synthesize everything that was happening in the world, put it into internal publication and share it.
Did somebody ask you to do that?
Initially, yes. But I continued long after they were interested. At some point, their interest faded, and I continued. And I think one of the things that is very important to do is just to stay consistent, and work for the job you want to be in. Now, I remember one of my very, very close friends said to me when I was in technology, she was in operations at the time, and I was in technology. She's like, Jude, let's just look around you. Like, everybody's in tech wearing, slacks, and why are you always in a suit? I'm like, dude, I'm not working for the job I'm in. I'm not dressing for the job. I'm dressing for the job I'm going to be in.
Wow.
And I looked very silly at the time, but that was sort of very, very early signs that this guy was going somewhere else, that he wasn't necessarily there to stay. And I think some of those attributes would help people get where they need to be.
You know, so funny. I can imagine, like, just thinking back on like my internship and my time in banking, I can imagine the sort of person that you were. I can just imagine that. You know, that guy that's a banger. Everybody knows that's that guy. Yeah, I can imagine. That's quite intense. That was quite intense. He was intense. I love that. It's really, really impressive. So this role at Standard Chartered, what exactly were you doing?
Initially, I was hired into what they call transaction banking, which is an element of corporate banking. So, but in transaction banking, the two main products you're selling are cash management solutions and trade finance. So I was responsible for European headquartered companies that had subsidiaries and operations in Africa, Middle East, and Asia. So I was flying to see their subsidiaries in Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Hong Kong, Dubai, China, etc., and selling solutions that will help them improve their cash management and also help them improve their trade cross-border. But then something happened that made me leave that corporate banking world because a group of friends, myself.
Wait, you're going to go into, I know what you're going to go into. Before you get into that kind of sounds like treasury though.
It is. A part of it is treasury.
Oh, okay,
treasury
cool.
management. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Before we jump onto that, one more thing about corporate, because with the effort that you said that you've put in, right? My thing with corporate, and I think a lot of people, sometimes it feels like all that extra effort doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily feel like if you're running your own business and you put in extra effort, especially if you're applying the levers in the right place, the outcome, you will feel like the effort that I put in, the outcome I will receive. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in corporate, the extra effort that you put in, it doesn't feel like you're going to get that back out. Did you ever think about it like that or no?
I did, but I realized very early on it was the wrong way to think about things. There's a scripture that I wish I could just tattoo on my forehead.
Tell us, Pastor.
That says, in all labor there is profit, right? So whether or not you see the profit in your paycheck or in your bonus at the end of the year, doesn't mean it hasn't profited you, right? And you might be right if you have a very sort of short to medium term view that, okay, I'm putting in this extra work. I expect to see it rewarded somewhat immediately in the form of either, recognition, promotion, or paycheck. You will be disappointed. Some things that the effort that I put in maybe 5, 6, 7, actually 8 years ago that I thought actually it wasn't recognized. I didn't get a bonus. I didn't get a nice paycheck off the back of that, have been extremely valuable to my business today. See, so there was profit, but that profit showed up 8 years down the line. So in all labor, there is profit. And I'm just gonna tell anybody who cares to listen that if you're doing anything, within corporate, that you probably feel like, you're not getting the recognition you deserve, trust me, it will show up down the line. You might not show up immediately, but in all labor, there is profit.
That is so good. That is so, so, so good. Okay, let's go back to what you were going to talk about.
Sure. So somewhere halfway in my corporate banking career, a group of friends and I sort of put our heads together and started what was then an angel syndicate. So we pulled in about £50,000 each, and we started investing in Black-owned businesses. And we kind of figured at that point that we were onto something. And so we knew we were going to make it an institutional fund, i.e. going to really big institutions to get them to back us, to continue backing the thesis that we had established, which is that there was alpha in diversity. But I've always been a bit of an opportunist, right? So I figured, okay, corporate banking is great, it pays well, but if I'm going to do anything that's going to benefit this VC fund, which is going to be, I need to find a way to get into the good books of wealthy people who can cut us a check into the VC fund. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to leave banking just to go wine and dine folks. I need to find something that will pay me to wine and dine folks. So I looked within the bank. I effectively became an entrepreneur at that point. I looked within the bank and I figured, okay, which part of this bank, Standard Chartered, would give me access to people with deep, 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 deep pockets? And obviously the private bank was top of that list. But I'm a corporate bank. I've been a corporate investment banker for 7 years now. Like, who's going to take me seriously in private banking and wealth management? But does that ever stop me? No. So what I did was I found out who the head of that department was, and I went and had a chat with her. And I said, look, I know you have a West Africa desk. I know for all intents and purposes, the West Africa desk is mainly focused on Nigeria because obviously that's where most of the wealth is. But I was born and raised in Ghana. I have a pretty decent network there. Take a bet on me. And I wrote an entire business plan of how I was going to deliver Ghana to them. After 6 months of deliberations back and forth, they bought my BS. And they hired me as a director in private banking. And the reason why that's very unusual is because if they're going to bring anybody into wealth management and private bank who has zero experience, they won't bring you in as a director. You have to understudy someone.
Right.
So it was very unusual that they brought me in as a director. And now I had to do exams that I hadn't done hitherto. And I had to sort of fast track it in a 3-month period to be qualified as a wealth planner, wealth manager, investment manager. And I did it in record time. Finished all my exams, got qualified, passed all of that stuff, got regulated, and started flying to Ghana, meeting wealthy people in order to help them externalize a portion of their wealth with the bank. But obviously there was a secondary motive, right? I knew that further down the line, they would become useful to me when we needed to set up a VC fund.
This is so insane. Like, there's so many parts of this that's just like, you're a very interesting person.
I'll take that as a compliment.
When you were director, and with the way that you have moved, right, there would have been somebody, let's say, who wanted that director role, who had been in Standard Chartered, I don't know, for a long time trying to do that, and they never was able to do it, and you did it. How did you manage, like, people? Did people have, like, adverse reactions to you and the way? Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
How?
Lamide, come on. Oh, yeah. I mean, I got all sorts of snide remarks. I would hear things from the grapevine about, who's this young guy, But I never really paid too much attention to that. For me, I'm very goal-oriented. I am stubborn. I am so stubborn about my goals, but I'm flexible about the methods. So, for example, if, my goal is A, but there's multiple ways to get to A, right? So if one way isn't working too well, then I'll focus on trying to get to A through a different route. But the sort of the aspersions that were cast, the innuendos, all that stuff, it never really bothered me. I literally just turned about. I have loyalists who will come and tell me, "Oh, this person said that, this person said that," but it didn't. It literally just went right over my head. Yeah, one in one ear, out the other.
So when you started up Cornerstone, which is the fund that you started, we are going to have one of the founders from Cornerstone joining, so we can talk more about that when he comes.
Sweet.
But were you dissatisfied with where you currently were?
I.e., in banking? Or?
Yeah, like just like at a point where you're in corporate, maybe you've reached heights that a lot of people would have wanted to reach, but you're kind of like, this is not it, I want something more. Like, what were you feeling internally?
I wasn't fully dissatisfied. I knew I was in a very privileged position, and that wasn't lost on me. I mean, I was a director at a very young age. I was flying to Ghana every 3 to 4 weeks, business class tickets, hotels, I was effectively getting paid to go home, see my family every month, and meet wealthy people every month and build a network. I mean, it was a fantastic opportunity. So that wasn't lost on me. I have to say I wasn't dissatisfied, but I still had an itch, and that itch has been there since I was a very young boy. I've always known I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Okay. I've always known I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to build businesses. I wanted to hire people. I wanted to give people livelihoods. And so that itch was there, and I knew I was getting closer and closer to it. But when we started Cornerstone, but I knew it still wasn't quite the right time, and I was patient with it.
So how did you end up becoming an entrepreneur? What was that journey, the exit from corporate?
So Cornerstone was definitely a taste into it, although it was very de-risked because I did it with a group of friends. And thank God, Touchwood is quite a successful fund today. But something happened in the spring of 2019. My late father had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And from the moment he was diagnosed to the moment he actually passed was no more than 6 weeks, right? And the tragic part of it was when we found out and we were flying him to the UK to have a second opinion from a doctor here. The moment he flew in the morning of a certain day, and by the night of that same day he passed. And he passed literally in my arms. And so it took a while to arrange the funeral. We eventually buried him in August, no, I beg your pardon, either July or August of 2019. And on the flight back from Ghana, after we buried my dad, I was just going through, a bunch of different scenarios in my head. And I just had this epiphany. It was almost like this wake-up call. It's hard to put into words. It was very visceral. And by the time we landed, my wife and my daughter landed in London, I knew I was going to put in my resignation. And I think the only way I can explain it is once that we lowered that casket into the ground, I asked myself, are my dreams worth deferring?
Wow, that's deep.
And I thought to myself, I ticked a lot of boxes in corporate. And would I rather take a risk on myself in my early 30s, or would I wait till my 40s and 50s to take a risk on myself? And I thought at that point, it made sense to take a risk on myself now. So without really having anything to go to, I just decided I was going to put in my resignation, and I did.
I'm sure they were like, no.
Everybody was like, Jude, are you crazy? This is a job that people's parents are praying and fasting for. And this is a job that you're just surrendering and going into the abyss of the unknown. But one thing I am is super firm about my convictions. It might not make sense to everybody. A lot of times it doesn't. But if I know what I know, I just move.
That's so interesting. I literally wrote a newsletter about that and I said that exact same line.
Wow.
But that's sick. So tell me more about JA Group then.
So JA Group today is a diversified investment holding company. We have 4 key businesses: JA Wealth, which is our wealth-focused financial services business. We have JA Digital, I beg your pardon, which is our tech business arm. We have 40 technology holdings, some of which are via Cornerstone and some of which are actually proprietary operating companies in-house. We have JA Elements, which is our natural resources business where we operate 8 gold mines and we do a bit of oil and gas trading within the West African sub-region. And then we have JA Realty, which trades under Collins & Cooper, which is our real estate company that does construction, development, interior design, fully integrated. JA Group is all these businesses, but if you want to look at the genesis of JA Group is actually JA Wealth, where at the point of resigning from Standard Chartered, as I just mentioned, a bunch of my clients who had brought to the bank decided they were going to follow me. And they became the first cohort of our wealth business. And today that wealth business has clients in 16 countries, in Europe, across Europe and Africa and North America, and manages just shy of about $180 million. And the other 3 businesses, Digital, Elements, and Realty, are literally offshoots of the wealth business, where our clients place a demand on us to give them exposure to technology startups. So we went into VC tech investing. They placed a demand to give them exposure to real estate. So we went into operate real estate businesses, and they wanted exposure to real assets such as gold. So we went all the way upstream and acquired gold concessions. So effectively, we are an integrated firm that follows the client journey and surrounds them with tender loving care.
So your verticals were created from client demand?
Correct.
Oh, interesting. So you took some of your clients with you. You must have pissed some people off with that.
A little bit.
How did you get them? What was the key component in getting them to trust you with their money, in getting them to leave a well-known, huge bank to follow this Ghanaian guy in his early 30s?
It's a great question. And it wasn't an answer. I didn't have an answer to that question for the longest time. My very dear friend and mentor, Lord Hastings, came to open up our offices in Ghana somewhere back end of 2023. And we had a fireside chat in front of the attendees. And he asked me this exact question. I didn't have an answer to it. And he says, Jude, I have your answer because I know you. And he says, the reason that people trust you with their money, I'm paraphrasing, is that because you are fiercely loyal and you have violent integrity. Violent integrity, and you are fiercely loyal. And when he says violent integrity, it means that in any deal, I would rather be first loss. I would take the first loss ahead of anybody else losing. And I think people and my clients saw that in me. And they decided to throw everything at me. And it's very unusual that in 5 years, a wealth management firm goes from 0 to 180 million. But it's because our clients have really believed in the vision and have trusted us wholeheartedly.
Wow. You're an impressive, I don't know what to say. I was going to say young man, but you're older than me. You're an impressive individual. Very, very impressive. Tell me more about Celery as well.
So I've always done work at the sort of the fringes of financial inclusion. I did it when I was a Standard Chartered, did something called banking the ecosystem. I'm not going to bore you with what that meant, but it was playing at helping the last mile gain access to financial services. So there was always a bit of a friction in me because I was playing very well at financial exclusion because typical of wealth management firms, which we fell prey to or victim to or became culprit of, was the fact that wealth management focuses on the top 1% of society. Probably the top 1% of the 1%. And the reason for that is very simple. It's just because that's how the unit economics make sense, you know? And so our wealth business was focused purely on centimillionaires and billionaires. But then you had this weird conundrum where people who actually needed financial advice, who weren't centimillionaires or billionaires, couldn't access it because you had all these very high minimums for people to access a wealth manager worth the assault. So that friction and that tension was real, where I say I believe in financial inclusion, but I was practicing financial exclusion, very much similar to the entire wealth management industry. So the team and I decided we needed to come up with a solution that helped everybody get access to the financial advice that they so needed. From accredited, internationally minded, globally accredited financial advisors and wealth managers. And that's how Celery came about. So Celery effectively is a wealth management platform that allows people to gain a whole picture of their wealth, see what their net worth looks like, see a breakdown of their liabilities and their assets, their income and their expenses, gain insights in terms of how they're tracking against their peers, for example, and things that they could be doing better. But most importantly, on demand, or at the click of a button, it gives them access to an accredited, a globally accredited financial advisor and wealth manager digitally that they can speak to face-to-face, although via screen. And they can see their entire wealth picture and give them investment recommendations and financial advice very seamlessly. And we had been working on that product for about 1.5 to 2 years, and it launched literally about 8 weeks ago.
If any of you guys are interested in checking out Celery, I will leave the link in the description. Anything else you want to add on that?
No, I mean, Celery is I think it's a game changer. It literally gives people access to the advice that ordinarily they will never get, or they'll have to pay an arm and a leg for. But it's a subscription-based system that is probably cheaper than your gym subscription. But it gives you access to UBS financial advisors, J Group financial advisors, very, very sort of cream of the crop type wealth managers.
That's incredible. So guys, definitely check it out. I will leave the link in the description. Now, final few questions before we move on to the next sections. If I was to ask you to be super honest with me, and I asked you, how did you get rich? What would you tell me?
Okay. How did I get rich? I have to flip it a little bit.
Okay.
What's the easiest way to make $1 million?
Okay. You're asking me?
I'm asking you.
Oh my God. The easiest way to make $1 million over what period of time?
Let's call it a year.
In a year?
Yeah.
I would say something, put yourself in a position where you're selling something. So some sort of salesperson of something that is high ticket. That's what would come to mind. I don't know. Easiest way to make $1 million. That's if I'm not starting with anything, I would probably enter some sort of sales role, personally speaking.
It's good. I mean, Richard Branson has a very sort of tongue-in-cheek way of answering that question, which is you start off with $1 billion and you buy an airline. And then you get to $1 million. But anyway, you're going to lose a ton of money. But I would say, given my context, the easiest way to make $1 million is to take 10 people who have $10 million, manage their wealth, and charge them 1%. That's how I became rich.
I love that. I actually love that. I love that. That's good. That's good. That's a good answer. So what's your focus for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's to build J Group into a $1 billion AUM business across all our business lines, to become a household name, because ideally you want to, stop focusing on just the 1% and sort of democratize that all the way down to the mass affluent and even further below. So we're looking at some acquisitions, and we effectively want to become a regional giant in the financial services space that has integrated all these other business lines that I've spoken about. So that's our medium-term aim, 5 to 10 years.
I love it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Wealthway segment, which is basically where one of the listeners sends in a dilemma and they just want your advice on what they should do. And if you guys are listening and you have any sort of finance-related dilemma, you can submit it anonymously using the link in the description box. Okay, so I'll read. This person says, my parents are mortgage-free in the UK and are selling their house to relocate. They have no debt and will split 350 to 365k once the house sells. They still have some assets but aren't cash rich and have limited pension pots. What would you advise they do with the money to maximize it?
Well, first of all, I have to start with a disclaimer that I'm not giving financial advice because I'm a regulated individual. But I'm going to make some assumptions because there aren't enough indicative details in there for me to make a proper assessment. I'm going to assume that they're probably over 60 since they're retiring, it sounds like, to relocate. And I'm going to assume certain things around their risk appetite. So given that age bracket, I would say probably more on the conservative side, right? I would definitely dissuade from buying more real estate at that age because especially in the UK and many other parts of the world, the entry costs of entering real estate are quite high. And you need to effectively, you need a lot more time to make that money back. So my recommendation would be to create a more annuitized income stream off that money. And what that typically means is finding a portfolio that yields regular income. So probably a portfolio of financial instruments, maybe some corporate bonds, government bonds that pay anywhere between 8 to 10% on the conservative side, because I would assume that the risk profile is conservative. And that will yield them somewhere between 15 to 20K a year. And I think that's probably the best approach.
Wow, that was very good advice. I don't think anyone has come on and spoken about corporate or government bonds before. If someone wanted to go about investing in that, how did they get started?
Well, it's kind of a market that is not easily accessible. And I say that because it's kind of an OTC market, the over-the-counter market, I beg your pardon. So typically the way you get access to those kind of instruments, I would say, is finding structured products offered by banks or sort of funds that have a basket of these instruments in there. So you can, for example, if you're in the UK, you would sign up to a platform like Hargreaves Lansdown and look for funds that have a basket of these income bonds, corporate bonds, government bonds in there, and then subscribe to a portion of those funds.
I like that. I don't even think I have anything to add. I think that was very succinct, good advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to be moving on to the quick fire money questions, which is just 3 questions, and you just tell me what your answer is.
Sure.
The first question is, what is the best investment you've ever made?
The woman I married.
Oh, who has the same? Can I say?
Yes, of course.
I was just going to say she has the same name as me.
She does.
I honestly feel like everyone with my name that's a girl is really smart and really beautiful.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true.
But sorry, carry on.
No, that's my answer.
Why is that the best investment you've ever made?
Because, all of the investments literally hinge on who you're with. And empirically speaking, the data shows it. But honestly, when I married her, I just saw a different change in my trajectory. And not to say that I was not already on this path, but it's just say that being with someone like her sort of accentuated my strengths, so to speak. And she's the rock, and she allows me to be the kite. And together we're quite a powerful force.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Wow. No, that's so good. Actually, it's not necessarily the most common one, but it is one of the most common ones. People talk about like marrying well as being one of their biggest or their best investments. I think we've had at least 3 or 4 people say that. So
fantastic.
That's really good. What is the biggest money mistake you've ever made?
There's probably a couple, but I think the general theme is throwing good money after bad. So you make one bad investment, and you try to recover that investment by throwing more money at it.
Ooh.
And it doesn't usually end well.
What's an example of that?
An example of that, for example, might be, let's say, writing a corporate loan to a business. The business isn't necessarily doing too well, but they need more money to turn a corner. And maybe there's a little bit of emotion, an emotional attachment either to the founder or to that business itself. And so out of maybe self-preservation, to avoid admitting the fact that you made a mistake the first time, you write another check, and that's just throwing good money after that. And I did that on one occasion, and I decided never to do it again.
But what about, how are you able to differentiate when it's like, okay, this thing is good, it just needs a bit more time? So maybe, let's say you have a business. I don't know. How do you differentiate between this thing is just in a bad spot, and if I put money in it and it can get through the next 3 months, for example, then I know it will get back up on its feet, versus, okay, this is the time to actually just cut the cord and say it's done?
I think you're probably asking 2 questions in one there. The point I was making was sort of a detached financial sponsor relationship where I'm the investor and that's the business.
Okay.
I think the question you're asking is kind of your baby, and you want to know when to cut the cord. Exactly. I think those are 2 slightly separate things. I think in the context you've just raised, it's very difficult to know when to cut the cord, because it becomes your baby. Who wants to murder their own baby, right? And so sometimes you have to employ sort of third-party voices, maybe a board that can tell you and give you a dispassionate view of what to do in that particular situation. But in the financial sponsor relationship, where it's a business you've invested in or given some money to, I think the best thing to probably do is to share that risk in that situation and socialize the opportunity to other people and other investors. And if they find merit in the investment case, you know that you're not necessarily thinking about it emotionally and trying to, right a wrong or make right a bad investment. You know that other people see that there's actually some hope in that particular opportunity.
Okay.
I wouldn't put more money in. You get other people to back it.
That's good. That's a good one. And then the final question is, what is one piece of advice you give to someone who is trying to build wealth or who is trying to build wealth globally?
One piece of advice you give to someone who's trying to build wealth, I would say you need to over-index to creating multiple streams of income, to creating more income rather than just cutting expenses. I've not seen many people become millionaires by cutting expenses.
Oh my God.
I've seen a lot more people, in fact, 99.9% of people I know who are millionaires or billionaires did so by creating more income rather than by cutting expenses.
This used to be one of my go-to sayings on this channel, that like there's only so much you can cut expenses to build wealth, but if you add additional streams of income, you're uncapped.
I'm telling you.
Nowhere you can go. Wow, this was so good. Guys, can you imagine when I first sat down with Jude and I said, you should come on the podcast? He's like, I don't think I have a story. I don't think I have anything to say. Like, really? This was definitely on my top list of interviews that we've had on this channel.
I hope it didn't disappoint.
No, it was good. I know I gave you that little bit of pressure at the start, but you delivered. It was really, really good. And I think your story is amazing. And I love it because you excelled in corporate and you also excelled in entrepreneurship as well. And people kind of pit those two things against each other. But you've used one and leveraged it to build something else. And it's just absolutely amazing. So if anyone wanted to, I don't know, either reach out to you or find out more about JA Group, find out more about Celery, where would you direct them to?
So I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn in the message and I will respond. But JA Group is jagroup.co and Celery is celery.co. So Celery with an EY at the end, so that's CELEREY.co. And yeah, you can find more about each of those businesses there.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
What's the tree exit? Because all I know is Kwasia. And things I probably shouldn't be saying. What's buy? I don't know.
But there isn't actually a buy. Tree. Well, my tree is not necessarily. I'm not an expert, but okay. I don't think there's I think it's buy.
Okay, well then bye.
Bye.